Today is day 100 of America's war with Iran. 100 days since the first American missiles hit Iranian soil. 100 days since Trump promised it would last 2 weeks. And here's where things stand. The war is still going. The ceasefire is not holding. The missiles are still flying. And the American family sitting at a gas station right now is paying for every single one of them. If you filled your tank this week, you paid more than you did before February 28th. If you bought groceries, those prices moved too. If you checked your retirement account in the last 3 months, you watched it react to every strike, every ceasefire announcement, and every Iranian missile that found its way into a Kuwait airport terminal. This war has moved into every American household, whether the household wanted it there or not. Here is the question that Day 100 forces. How does the United States spend over $100 billion, fire half its best missiles, lose 13 American service members, and arrive at a morning where Iran is still launching rockets at bases that house American soldiers, and the Secretary of State is standing in front of cameras calling it a ceasefire? By the end of this video, you will understand why this war remains unpopular among a majority of Americans, including nearly 1 in 5 Republicans. Why the ceasefire Marco Rubio declared collapsed within 48 hours of the announcement, and why the numbers from Day 100 tell you something the administration has been working hard to keep you from calculating on your own. Let us start with what the numbers actually say, because the accounting alone is the story. The war began on February 28, 2026. In the first 6 days, the Pentagon spent $11.3 billion. In the first 24 hours alone, $2 billion in munitions were expended against Iranian targets. The Penn-Wharton budget model estimated the total economic cost to the United States at between $40 and $210 billion, depending on duration. By April, the Pentagon's own acting comptroller told Congress the official figure had reached $25 billion. Unofficial trackers put the total today above $100 billion. And here is the number that connects to your life more directly than any of those. According to researchers at Brown University, the Iran war has already cost the average American household $395 in higher energy costs alone. Not in taxes, not in future debt. In the price of gasoline, you are already paying. Gasoline that was at $2.98 per gallon before the war started and hit $4.32 on June 1st, a 45% increase in 100 days. But here's what the accounting does not show. In the first 39 days of the war, the United States struck more than 13,000 targets inside Iran. That number sounds like overwhelming force. It was. And it had a price that will take years to pay. According to the Center for Strategic and International Studies, the Pentagon burned through approximately 50% of its supply of Patriot ballistic missile interceptors. 45% of its precision strike missiles are gone. Half of its terminal high-altitude area defense inventory has been depleted. Senator Mark Kelly, a retired Navy captain who had access to classified Pentagon briefings, told CBS News it would take years to replenish these stockpiles. Defense Secretary Pete Hegseth responded by launching an investigation into Kelly for allegedly leaking classified information. Kelly was not wrong about the shortage. He was told to stop saying it out loud. That is the moment that tells you something important about how Day 100 looks from inside the administration. When a senator with classified access says the weapons cabinet is half empty, and the response is to investigate the senator rather than address the shortage, you are no longer in the territory of normal wartime communication. You are in the territory of a war that the people running it cannot afford to describe honestly. And that is not just a military problem. It is a political one. Because here is what no official press briefing will say directly. The administration launched a war that the majority of the country it governs never wanted, cannot clearly define the end point of, and is now paying for at the gas pump every single morning. Before the war started, polling showed a majority of Americans opposed bombing Iran. When the bombing started, the numbers did not improve. A Marist poll from March found that 55% of Americans view Iran as a minor threat or no threat at all. The Reuters Ipsos poll put Trump's approval rating at 36% by late March, his lowest since returning to the White House, driven specifically by disapproval of the war and the rising cost of gasoline. As of the most recent polling, 58% of Americans disapprove of Trump's handling of the conflict. That includes 21% of Republicans. 1 in 5 people who voted for this president believes the war he started was a mistake. And perhaps the most striking political casualty of the conflict was not a politician at all. There is one more political dimension to Day 100 that the mainstream political media is underplaying because it cuts across normal partisan lines. Tucker Carlson, the broadcaster who spent years as one of Trump's most prominent and effective supporters, broke publicly with the president over this war. On the day the strikes began, Carlson called the joint U.S.-Israel attack on Iran absolutely disgusting and evil. He said it would shuffle the deck in a profound way for Trump's political movement. He accused Trump of being, in his word, a slave to Israeli Prime Minister Benjamin Netanyahu's ambitions. By April, Carlson had gone further, appearing on his podcast to apologize to his audience for having misled supporters into voting for Trump in the first place, calling it a cause of personal torment. The man who helped build the coalition that elected this president said the war was his biggest mistake in supporting him. That rupture is not a media story. It is a structural crack in the political foundation that put this war in motion. But none of that stopped the war from continuing. And nothing about Day 100 suggests it is ending. Here is what happened in the last 72 hours. On June 3rd, Iran launched drone attacks against Kuwait International Airport. 1 person was killed. 63 people were injured. The terminal was hit, and flights were suspended. Kuwait is home to United States Army Central, the forward command for the entire American ground force in the Middle East. On June 5th, Iran launched 7 ballistic missiles toward Bahrain and Kuwait. The United States intercepted 6. The 7th missed its intended target. The American military struck Iranian coastal radar installations in retaliation. The United States Central Command denied that Iran had fired warning shots near 2 American destroyers in the Gulf of Oman. Iran said it had. Both governments are describing the same week of combat differently, because one of them has to call it a ceasefire. This brings us to the diplomatic situation as of this morning, and to the statement that defines what Day 100 actually looks like when you strip away the press briefings. Secretary of State Marco Rubio said the war was over. He said this publicly, in front of cameras, with a straight face. The statement came days after Iranian drones hit Kuwaiti soil. It came days before Iranian missiles were fired at American allied territory. When asked by reporters whether the shaky truce was holding, Trump himself provided a clarification that said more than any official statement could. "A ceasefire there," he explained, "is much different than a ceasefire in other parts of the world. In that part of the world," he continued, "a ceasefire is when you are shooting in a more moderate pattern." This is the definition America's war has settled into on day 100. A moderate pattern of shooting that both sides are willing to call something other than war. The next round of formal negotiations between the United States and Iran is scheduled for the week of June 22nd. Both sides have to agree to sit down. Both sides have to agree to a framework. And the core sticking point remains the same one it has been for months. Iran wants $24 billion in frozen assets released before it commits to anything. The United States has refused to move on that number while the blockade continues. And the blockade continues while the assets remain frozen. It is a circular standoff that 100 days of combat operations has not broken. And now here's the question that the 100th day forces you to ask about the reason the war started in the first place. The stated objective, the goal that the administration used to justify launching Operation Epic Fury, the goal that cost $100 billion and 45% of America's precision strike missiles, was to ensure that Iran could never possess nuclear weapons. On day 100, access for international nuclear inspectors inside Iran remains limited. The International Atomic Energy Agency said Friday that Iran continues to restrict their visibility. And in the last 48 hours, a senior Iranian cleric, Mohammad Mehdi Hosseini Hamadani, reiterated Tehran's official position. Iran's nuclear technology and uranium enrichment cannot be negotiated away. That position has not moved in 100 days. The missiles have not changed it. The blockade has not changed it. The gasoline prices have not changed it. The most expensive 100 days in American military history since the Iraq invasion has produced a ceasefire that is not a ceasefire, and a nuclear program that is not gone. So here is the question that day 100 leaves open. Is this a war that is winding down toward a deal that will actually prevent Iran from getting a nuclear weapon, making the $100 billion and $395 per household the price of something real? Or is this a war that cannot end because neither side can admit what the other side would have to give up for it to end? Meaning, every morning you wake up and check the gas price, you are paying for a conflict that has no defined exit. One side says the pressure is working. Iran is down to 21% of its pre-war missile supply. The regime is financially broken, and a deal is weeks away. The other side says the regime has survived 100 days. The nuclear program is still running. The ceasefire is not real. And the American household has paid $400 for a stalemate. Write your answer in the comments, because the people who say the pressure is about to produce a deal, and the people who say this is the opening of a much longer and more expensive conflict, are about to have the most important argument on this channel.